In this video, we are going to discuss a mind-blowing game played between Dubov Daniil versus Vidit Gujrathi, and this game is from the Tata Steel Chess Masters 2022, round number 3. After the 2 rounds, Vidit is one of the current leaders. He currently scored 1.5 points out of 2. He first beat Sam Shanklin in the first round and he drew the second game with Caruana Fabiano, whereas Dubov scored 1 point after 2. During both the games against Mamedyarov in the first round and Sergei Karyakin in the second round. So let's check it out. Will Vidit be able to continue his lead in the tournament, or will Dubov strike back? Let's check it out, because Dubov is a very creative player and Vidit is a very solid player. And currently Vidit is having a very good score against Dubov. So will he able to maintain that score? So let's check it out. So Dubov with the white pieces started out the game with 1 e4, and Vidit with the black pieces solid reply with e5. Knight f3, knight to c6. Now we have bishop to c4, not going for the Ruy Lopez but going for the Gogo piano. Knight to f6, and after knight f6 there could be some ideas of knight g5 going for the fried lever, hitting the pawn on f7, and all those who don't know the line, g5, pawn takes, and who don't know the line will go for capturing the pawn, which is a blunder because of knight into f7, king f7, queen f3 check. You need to go for protecting the knight, and knight c3, knight e7, d4, and it's completely winning for white in the position. You basically sack a pawn, but it opens up the e file, castle, rook e1. It's already over for black. So, but okay, the right way is to play d5, pawn takes, and knight to a5, hitting the bishop. And the line is to play bishop to b5 check, c6, sacrificing a pawn, bishop d3. So by sacrificing a pawn, in the exchange black got a huge amount of activity. But okay, Dubov at the place of playing the fried lever, he decided to place d3, a very solid setup, and with it responded with bishop to c5, c3. So the idea of playing c3 is first of all taking a good control of the d4 square, and perhaps there could be some ideas of playing d4 in the future. d6, bishop to g5, pinning up the knight on f6, h6, bishop to h4, and now we have a5. Yep, a very common idea, expanding on the queen side, not allowing b4 ideas like this, and also making a square for the bishop to go back on a7 at some point. And now we have knight to a3, and I think after knight a3, this move must have surprised Vidit, because knight a3 is not a common move. The common move is like knight d2 or even perhaps a castle. After knight a3, white ideas to play knight to c2 followed by knight to e3 at some point and taking control of this deadly d5 square. So Vidit went for a very natural move, capturing the knight, and after b into a3, what is happening in this position is white is having a double pawn on the a file, which is not a good sign for the white. But in the exchange, white got this open b file, so white can simply play rook b1, and at some point white can create some pressure on the b7 pawn. So this could be an idea. And now we have queen e7, and after queen e7, white decided to castle. And first of all, at the place of castle, a natural move looks like to simply castle in this position, because it is one of the moves that you are going to play. It doesn't matter when, but this is one of the most natural moves. But the idea, which I think Dubov must have came prepared with, was after castle, he's going to castle. And in this position, if Vidit at some point tries to play g5, hitting the bishop, then white is already winning in this position by sacrificing the knight for the 2 pawns. And after king g7, the idea is to play rook h8 and perhaps protecting the knight on f6. White is simply going to win by playing f4. A very strong move. Idea is to simply capture the e pawn. The f file is open up. The queen can come by playing queen e1, queen g3, attacking the king. It's already over for black. So castle, which looks one of the most natural move, was not played by Vidit, and which was, I think, was a very nice decision by him. And when I was watching the game, I thought that perhaps bishop e6, but after bishop e6, I thought that after bishop e6, f6, queen b3, and the queen attacks both the pawns on b7 as well as on e6. So I thought that okay, Vidit played queen e7 and his idea is to play bishop to e6 so that after bishop into he can capture with the queen. So we have castle by Dubov, and now we have knight to b8, which was, I think, a fantastic move played by Vidit. The most natural move looks to play bishop to e6, trading off the bishops. But I think Vidit saw this move and he must be thinking like bishop b5, pinning up the knight, and after something like castle, g4, and d5 is already very dangerous. I think Vidit must have dropped this idea. So he played knight to b8. The reason I liked this move very much was black wants to play knight d7, protecting the knight on f8, so that after castle, black can go for playing g5, because the knight on d7 is currently protecting the knight on f6, so the sacrifice isn't going to work for white. So knight b8, and now we have d4 by white. Knight to d7, and now we have rook b1 taking control of the b file, and now finally we have g5 by Vidit. Bishop to g3, sacrificing the knight on g5 doesn't make any sense because black haven't castled yet, so it's completely losing for white. So that's why bishop to g3 was forced by Dubov. And what I thought is that the move which Vidit played, knight to b8, came up with a surprise by Dubov, because knight b8 isn't a human move at all. Knight b5 is a human move. It's basically the 7th best move perhaps according to the engine, but it must have surprised Dubov. Bishop to g3, and now we have knight into e4, so black finally is a pawn up, capturing the e4 pawn. But the loss of capturing the e4 pawn is that white e file is also open. So after queen c2 hitting the knight, in this position a natural move looks to capture the bishop, but after f into g3, the problem is the f7 pawn is incredibly weak, and I can simply sacrifice the bishop on f7 and followed by knight into e5, attacking the queen or perhaps the king if you capture with the king, and it's completely winning for white, and it's definitely not a comfortable position for black. That was the reason Vidit doesn't go for playing knight into g3, and he came up with an excellent move, f5, simply supporting the knight with the pawn on f5, and perhaps f4 could be some ideas of trapping the bishop. And the idea of playing f5 was to cement the knight on e4, which was a very good idea by Vidit. Pawn takes, and now the question is whether you capture the d pawn with the pawn or with the knight. You are going to definitely capture the pawn, but with pawn or with the knight. Vidit went for capturing the pawn with the pawn, which was the right decision. If he would have captured the pawn with the knight, then after bishop into e5, pawn into e5, rook to b5, a fantastic move. You simply cannot defend the pawn on e5, and white is completely winning. Vidit chose the best, capturing the pawn with the pawn, and now we have rook to e1, and now we have knight into g3, finally capturing the bishop. Pawn takes, and now we have e4, hitting the knight, but you cannot hit the knight because the queen is hanging on e7. g4, a fantastic move by Dubov. He wants to capture the pawn on f5, followed by capturing the pawn on e4. Knight to c5, another incredible move by Vidit. The idea of playing knight to c5 was, first of all, protecting the pawn on e4, and second idea was that if white tries to capture the pawn on f5, I can capture it back with the bishop. So we have knight to d4, putting more pressure on the pawn on f5, and now we have rook to f8. Capturing the pawn on g4 doesn't look a good move at all. Knight b3 is already good for white, just removing the defender from the pawn on e4. You can't go for capturing the knight because rook into e4 simply loses the queen, and it's over for black. So rook to f8, adding one more defender to the pawn on f5. Pawn takes, bishop takes, and now comes the brilliant move by Dubov. You can put this game on the chess.com and just analyze this move. Rook into b7, incredible. The idea of playing rook into b7 was you are basically sacrificing the rook. And in the game, we have rook to f6 by Vidit. If Vidit would have captured the rook, then comes the incredible move. First of all, capturing the bishop is wrong, because after rook into f5, if you are thinking rook into e4, hits the queen and the king, I can simply grab the rook between on e5. So it's not working. But the right move after knight into b7 is to give a check by the bishop, And now the king is having 2 squares. He can go for playing king f7 or king to d8. If you try to play king d8, knight to c6 check, and the queen is already lost. So black is forced to play king to f7. If you try to play something like c6 hitting the bishop, I can simply play bishop into c6 check, and after king d8, I think knight into f5, rook into f5, and rook into e4 hits the queen. The knight is dead. The queen can simply come, and it's all over for black. So king to f7, and here comes knight into f5, capturing the bishop. And after knight into f5, the queen is attacked. I can simply grab the pawn on e4 in the next move, and it's already winning for white. So you can say it was a very deep calculation by Dubov, which was an incredible move. But with great attacks comes great defense. We have rook to f6 by Vidit, a fantastic defense. The idea of playing rook f6 is, in this position, if you try to give me a check by bishop, now I can play king to f8. And now if you try to capture the bishop with the knight, I can defend the bishop with the rook on f6. This was the idea. So bishop to b5 was not played, and now we have queen to b1, which turned out to be a mistake by white. A much better move would have been to play rook to b5. The idea is to put pressure on this 5th rank. You cannot move the knight because the bishop is hanging on f5. So you can say black is already facing many problems. But queen b1, perhaps some ideas of Dubov was to give a check on the b8. But he simply, I think he missed or what. Now black can go for capturing the rook on b7 with the knight. Queen into b7, and now we have rook to d8. So I think perhaps Dubov simply missed this idea that knight can still go for capturing the rook. And now we have rook d8, knight into f5, rook into f5, rook into e4. The rook is supported by the queen. Here comes a check, king h2, and now we have rook to e5. And despite being a exchange down, it's still an equal position. White is having the options to give black a couple of checks. First, we have queen to c6 check, king to d8, queen to a8 check, king d7, bishop to b5 check, king e6. You cannot go for playing king to d6. It's a checkmate for black. King to e6. So you can just say that with it, have to find force moves, or else he's going to lose at any moment. Queen to c6, queen to c8 check, king to f8, king to f6, and now we have queen to h8 check. King to f5, and after king f5 comes the blunder move by Dubov, f3, which turned out to be a huge blunder. The best move was to play queen to c8 check in this position. And the idea of playing queen c8 check is that black is forced to go on f6 or g6. You cannot go for capturing the rook, because here comes queen to g4 check. Black is forced to go on d5. Here comes queen to c4 check, king d6, and now queen c6 is game over for black. So I think this idea was missed by Dubov, perhaps because although it was a classical game, but in this position, around this position, both the players were in incredible time pressure. And after king f6, perhaps you can say queen to h8 check, and after king to g6, not king g6, it's a blunder, but king f5 and queen c8 check, and black is forced to take a draw. But it turned out to be that after queen to c8 check, king to f6, queen h8 check, king f5, and here Dubov played f3, which turned out to be the blunder, because here black can simply go for capturing the rook, pawn takes, king into, and here Dubov tried to give a check, but it's already winning for black, because now you can say, you can just simply count the pawns. Black is having 4 pawns, so white is also having 4 pawns, but black is an exchange up, and white king is already weak. Once white checks are over, black is simply going to check the white king, and it's already mate for white. We have a couple of more moves played by Dubov, but after g4 check, king to d2, and now on the move number 37, after playing king to d2, Dubov with the white pieces resigned the game, and with it came up with the ultimate defense to beat, or you can say to beat Dubov, or you can say the ultimate attacker in the game. Dubov was the only one who was simply attacking in the game, and with it was the one who was actually forced to find many difficult moves, which were actually incredible to find. Yeah, incredible. the way that Dubov attacked, or you can say that perhaps that was his preparation. Or yeah, he likes to play the creative chess. But Vidit was so solid that I think perhaps this was one of his best games played in his life. So if you also like this incredible game played between these two top players, then make sure to like the video and share this video with, and make sure to share this video with everyone, because this game was actually so epic that I think many players would have been simply blown their mind. So I'm going to come up with these interesting videos for you. So make sure to subscribe the channel, click the notification bell, because I'm going to come up with these interesting videos so that at any time you will get the notification. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.